Hello, everybody, and welcome to the WREVA Electrifying News segment for January 2023. Thanks very much for tuning in. With me as normal, we've got Mr. Ian Graham joining us from the downtown Kitchener area, not Mexico today, downtown Kitchener.
No.
How are you today,
Yeah,
sir?
I'm hanging in. I'm not liking this weather.
Not Mexico
I don't
weather,
like
huh?
it. It's definitely not Mexico weather. My solar panels aren't liking this weather. And it's depressing. It's so depressing after being in Mexico for 2 weeks. But anyways, boo-hoo me, right? Oh, well.
Yeah, it's rough. It's rough.
Yeah.
Also joining us, as per usual, we have Mr. Eric Stevens from the Listowel area. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing good, Mark. I'm a little confounded by our weather right now, where it seems like at Christmas, somebody ordered a white Christmas, hit add to cart like 10 times. It got shipped. It got shipped here, and then a week later, it got all shipped back again. So
Yeah, all the snow disappeared. So it's been an interesting start to winter, hasn't it?
yeah,
Has not been a normal weather winter so far. So
yeah.
although I can't complain, the more rain we get, the less shoveling we have to do. So I'm not too upset with that.
Yeah.
I'm in my head. I'm trying to think of. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, but modernized and adding. I added it to my cart 10 times. There's got to be some lyrics there that we can do that.
Well, we've got a bunch of news stories to go over for the past month or so, and Ian's going to start us off with the PowerPoint presentation.
All right. First off, we got China in the news, and I'm going to turn this over to Eric to let him explain what's happening with China and our battery supply.
Yeah, so this is BNEF did a study, and they did this comprehensive study looking at 30 different leading countries, and they looked at 45 different metrics of different key, and they pulled out 5 key themes, basically looking at battery supply for different regions in the world and different countries and things like that as well too. And they, not surprisingly, they came out that China is number one. They have a lot of raw materials and rare earth metals. They already are big in battery manufacturing today. They have a lot of infrastructure. They already have some innovation there. And it is also one of the biggest markets today for electric vehicles today. So China today has the demand for electric vehicles today. And there's huge, massive production going on through today. So that's why China is number one. But one of the surprising things there is Canada was number two. And one of the big reasons why Canada was number two, of course, is, we do have also a great abundance of raw materials here in Canada. But also, we tend to do things environmentally a lot better. We're a very safe and a good country to do business in. And the areas where we could improve on today is we don't have a huge amount of battery infrastructure today, and we don't have a lot of downstream demand today. But as demand increases, I think, in the United States, and as more infrastructure comes into Canada, I think Canada has the potential to potentially even overtake China in the next 5 years or so in this. So I think the areas where Canada was number two in, I think those are areas that will change in the next 5 years.
Wow. So they think that with the adoption of EVs, that our demand is going to go through the roof then, basically, and allow us to catch up to China.
Yeah, I mean, the United States is still the largest automotive market in the world. And, while China is the biggest EV demand market in the world, I think, minus Wyoming, I think the U.S.
Oh, we had to bring that up. We had to bring that up.
I had to throw it in. And basically, I think the United States will eventually come around and become probably one of the largest EV markets in the world over the next probably 5 to 10 years. So, and by correspondence, and because of the USMCA free trade agreement, Canada will become a very major player in battery manufacturing as a result of that.
Cool. Is Wyoming? I hear they're looking at separating to be an independent state now as well.
I heard they're going back to just horse and buggy. They're going to skip the car step, all of it. Just go right back to horse and buggy.
Yeah, because like once you're in Wyoming, why do you need to go anywhere else, right? For our
For
listeners who
those
don't
of you that
understand
don't
this,
know, look
yeah,
up the Wyoming. We're not going to cover the Wyoming story today. We're just going to joke around the edges of it. So
yeah,
that's some homework for those of you watching. Go check out
yeah.
what Wyoming wants to do by 2035.
Yeah, exactly. Eric, I find it interesting. I think, in 5 years to see if Canada might come to the close to what China is or even surpass it. It would definitely will be interesting to see if that happens. And environmentally, yeah, like I really, yeah, believe that Canada, we've got a little bit better environmental aspect of how we get our, raw materials for batteries, especially compared to China. China's one of those countries where I always take everything with a kind of a grain of salt. But I will say, yeah, in terms of the automotive electric vehicle market, China is just booming. And Tesla, of course, they recently did a price drop, and it was interesting to see where that now is also shifting the interest from BYD and other electric vehicles to now back to Tesla. Of course, they had the protest for those who bought Teslas and like, wait a minute, what do you mean I didn't get the price cut? But in general, this aspect for Canada, I think definitely we're going to be seeing more of the market for Canada with electric vehicle battery manufacturing and the raw materials, not only for domestic use, but I think worldwide as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. Fisheries and Oceans. They're adding electric vehicles to their fleet. This is pretty cool.
Yes, with the backing of the federal and provincial governments, we've got this story here of how the government of Canada is looking to, I guess, move their fleets as it makes sense to electrification. So this story is about Fisheries and Oceans Canada looking to expand their fleet of vehicles into the electrified range. They're only not a great deal here. They've only purchased 3 Model 3 long-range sedans, which will be stationed out in Vancouver Island. And then they also got a little bit of a 6, I believe, Ford Lightning pickup trucks for use throughout actually all different parts of the country. So it looks like there might be one in several places: BC, Manitoba, Quebec, and the East Coast. So not a big surprise here. Canada has been pushing electrification to everybody now for quite some time. It's been fairly steady, and as the government of Canada needs to replace fleet vehicles, obviously this is going to be their first selection. Does it make sense to be electrified for this particular task? And if so, what options are available? The great thing about this is that now the pickups are starting to roll out. That's going to provide an excellent offshoot for Canada to purchase a vehicle that's right for the job. There's no point in purchasing a sedan if the job is hauling a bunch of things around. Even though it's electrified, you've got to be able to do the job first, and that's what the vehicle is for. So as more and more electric vehicles come on stream, I just see these type of purchases being easier and easier for government agencies to select because there's going to be the right type of vehicle to do the job that's currently open to have a vehicle in. So good news here, and we hope to see more of it as time goes along.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw in the article that you posted there, Mark, too, that last year they purchased a couple Bolt EVs as well, too. And I think one of the things that's interesting is a lot of the fleet owners today that are doing these calculations for stuff like that, they go into EVs with fairly conservative numbers and even sort of worst case scenario. And when that happens, then when they actually get these vehicles and start using them, the numbers actually start coming back a lot better than they expect. It seems like I've seen a number of fleet owners that have been doing the calculations for the last couple of years, and now they're actually finding out that the cost estimates are, they're saving a lot more money than they originally anticipated. which is also a great thing too, because that gets them enthusiastic about growing their fleets and doing more. And yeah, I agree to your point there, Mark. As we get more and more options onto the market, stuff like the F-150 Lightning and other vehicles on the market that can do more. These types of vehicles are commonly used in fleet applications, and that'll open up more possibilities for customers to update their fleets to something cleaner and more efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they just need to get a picture of that Model 3 with a pontoon boat being towed behind it, like mine that I did up north.
I was going to say, I think that picture like that is floating around. It just doesn't say Fisheries and Oceans on the side of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But, to Eric's point about, the conservative estimates, and then numbers, finally the truth kind of comes in, and they're realizing like, wow, these numbers are even better than what we were originally told. It works across so many things, not only for the fleet owners, but even for the general public, because these guys are out, and I'm sure that the general public will run into them and ask them their opinion on these vehicles. And when these numbers are kind of shared, it just once again helps showing the impact electric vehicles have on the bottom line. Because as taxpayers probably would turn around and say, well, why are we spending $100,000, let's say, on the Ford F-150 when we can get the gas version for, let's say, 70? But the numbers are going to be proving that. And then also too is, like, of course, the maintenance aspect of things is nowhere the same, because we're not doing the oil changes and that. So this is really great to see. And Canada is also, as a government, is trying to kind of put their money where their mouth is, and show that this can be done. We can do this stuff. So it's great to see. All right, moving along. This came up in December, and I find this is for Australia, mind you, and basically all of us know Toyota has done extremely well for decades with their vehicles. Whenever you talk to someone, Toyota is always that company. Oh yeah, they're so reliable, and they are. They're great vehicles, but it's interesting how times are kind of changing now, and we're now seeing a shift from Toyota, who, quite honestly, there's many of us who still look at Toyota as kind of dragging their feet when it comes to the full-on electric vehicle. They brought, of course, the Prius, and that was an amazing vehicle, and the Prius is still a hybrid, now more of a plug-in hybrid, but not the full electric. They've been always kind of a little hesitant on that aspect. But anyways, Tesla is now showing in Australia that they're actually beating out the Toyota Camry. And I mean, the numbers are close when you look at it, but the sentiment, I think, is going to start changing. It's going to start shifting. And this is to the point where Toyota, I think they're going to have to start making some decisions about how much longer they want to do a plug-in hybrid versus just a full-on battery electric vehicle. And this would be kind of a bit of a pushing point, I think, could come up.
Yeah, I think this is interesting news in a couple fronts, because Australia is a place where Toyota historically has been a very strong brand in in Australia. It's sort of Toyota's backyard, not too far from Japan, and so Toyota has historically been one of the stronger companies that have done business in Australia, especially recently after Ford and General Motors have largely pulled out of manufacturing in Australia. And what's interesting about this too is Australia doesn't have really strong incentives for EVs either. And typically a lot of the EVs tend to be very expensive in Australia. So the fact that the Model 3 has done this well against the Camry is that's an impressive feat.
Yeah, I was surprised that because as Eric has mentioned, Australia is not all that EV friendly at this point. Hopefully they're going to grow in that regards. But the other aspect that was interesting is that there might be a little bit of pent up demand for the Model 3. There may have been a number of people waiting for that vehicle. It has been sold in Australia for longer than December, obviously, but it's good to see at least that even if even if it's a short-term thing and it only lasts 3 or 4 or 5 months, it's great to see that an EV can move to the top of the charts and let people know that this is not just a fad. This is something that people can actually use, and the demand is there from the public in order to push it to this new plateau. So I think Australians are going to notice this and start to see that, with these sales numbers, that EV is an option that they can choose, and it can be reliable and work in their lives. Obviously, it doesn't work for everybody. We've always said that, but the vast majority of people, especially those live regionally or within cities, the EVs are certainly an easy option for people to switch to out of their gasoline vehicles. So I look forward to more and more people in Australia discovering that fact.
Yeah. I find it surprising with Australia that they haven't embraced this more, especially with the fact that once you get an EV, you probably want to get solar. And of course, Australia, I mean, there's so much sun down there.
Yeah.
It just makes so much sense. But they're also dealing with the politics and the political environment of a prime minister who really pushed coal as well. So that
I believe he was a politician in Wyoming previous to this.
Yes, yeah. Didn't they had a joint partnership of sharing coal back and forth on coal-powered cargo ships. Right.
And Australia is one of the biggest exporters of coal to China and stuff like that as well too. So there's a lot of big business interest in Australia in oil and gas and coal and stuff like that as well too. So unfortunately, they have had quite the influence in the government.
Yeah, yeah. I'm surprised. Why isn't Wyoming having like electric vehicles that says powered by Wyoming coal? They could like put that on their license plates. Oh man, we're going to be getting hate mail from Wyoming pretty soon. Oh, nice. All right. Trudeau. Yeah. Yeah. So Trudeau is here we go talking about the raw materials with batteries, and now we're talking about the actual building of the batteries and doing the components here in Ontario.
Yeah, so a company, Belgium-based Umicore, is building a facility that helps with processing of the materials and into making parts that will eventually go into building batteries and stuff like that. And this is being located up sort of towards the Kingston area in Eastern Ontario. And it's going to create about 1,000 jobs as well too, which is fantastic. And this is all part of the big supply chain. And this is part of the previous article I listed before, of building that base infrastructure up in order to create Canada and start slowly turning Canada into that potential EV powerhouse that we can be. So I think this is a piece of the puzzle, and it's a good piece of the puzzle that's going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's great to see that that these little incremental changes are happening, and I think a lot of this is being pushed by the demand for EVs in the United States is starting to really jump. The IRA Act that had a lot of EV components in it and included Canada as part of the delivery method of those parts or raw materials is going to be quite a benefit, I believe, to Canada. And more of these stories are coming out. Battery tech, we've got plants that are being considered, we've got raw materials that are being used and refined. All this stuff is starting to contribute. And this story from Eric is just the latest that's being added to the top of this. So, and what's great about the IRA in the United States is that act it's slated for 10 years. So this is something that's going to be an ongoing thing and will allow companies to invest in the infrastructure in Canada, in the United States, in Mexico, the free trade partners, to allow it for them to produce and be on solid ground as to what the returns are for that company, because it's over such a long period of time. So I look forward to more and more of these announcements, and I have a feeling there's going to be a lot more.
Yeah, exactly, Mark. 10 years is enough time for businesses to start putting in those routes and really building that supply and then getting that scale there as well too. Because once you get the scale and once you get the learning going and the processes going, then the costs will come down as well too. And once that happens, then the incentives won't be required.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it's just another good success story to see for Ontario yet again. And I'd be interested in seeing how many podcasts back have we been talking about these, new battery aspects of things with the province announced the critical minerals. I'm trying to remember, Critical Minerals Act, and just everything that's sort of like we've been talking about for a few months now. And it seems like every time we get to a new podcast, we're still talking about something new that's coming up. So it's great to see.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Wheels on the bus go round and round. And
yes,
laying
indeed.
Bus lines hitting electric. Yeah.
And actually, when we sent these stories in, I had sent Ian over these stories to load up just yesterday. In my case, I was behind a school bus just the other day that was belching out diesel in front of me. It was here we are in the rain, it's pouring rain, and this bus is just belching out a diesel exhaust in big black clouds. And I'm going, this is such a, such a key thing to get done. We have our children driving around on these buses, and I, being a bus student myself at a younger time, I used to remember that if the windows were left down at all, even sometimes if the windows were all up, you'd still get that smell of diesel and exhaust into the back of the bus. So it's great to hear that Lang Bus Lines, based out of the London, Ontario area, have decided that they're going to start pushing towards electric. They have about a total of 400 school buses in their fleet, and this year they're going to start moving out the gas buses or diesel buses and replacing them with electric. They hope to convert somewhere in the area of 200 over the next year, and then work on the other 200 after that. So it's great to see that some are starting to realize that with what a school bus does, what its job is, it fits in perfect with an electric vehicle because they have the ability to charge these buses overnight. They're all sitting there regardless anyways. And in the morning, they've got short routes that will allow them to basically, even though it's a very large and heavy vehicle, they don't have to have oversized battery packs in order to perform the routes that they're on to collect and drop off students throughout the day. And then the other plus, which this article doesn't even talk about, is that as time goes along, this is going to be a bonus to the grid that they're sitting on. This could be vehicle to grid power that could be utilized by the utility that hooks up this bus company to the grid. So, and that would be another source of revenue for Lang as well. So I'm sure they're looking at this. This may not be something you can do right at the outset, but starting to convert those buses to electric is the first step. And converting that diesel fleet is what you want to get working on, and the grid connection can come later to help with some additional sale of electricity revenue. But I certainly hats off to Lang Bus Lines, and I hope the other bus lines in our region, like Sharp and others, start to see that this is the way to go for their students' health and the overall health of the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely agree, Mark. I mean, as you mentioned, this is like a perfect usage case for electrification. Very quickly, predictable bus routes for the most part. The mileage and the routes are very well known going into this. And yeah, the vehicle to grid options are also fantastic. And I remember, our WREVA event we had in Cambridge, where they actually had a Lion bus come out, and that was a fun little ride we got to take on that bus. So
yep.
I thoroughly enjoyed that, and that's going back now about 4 years now, I think. We
Yeah,
had the
yeah,
event, so
it's been a while, and Lion, of course, hasn't stopped either. They're producing buses like crazy,
yeah.
as well as other medium and heavy trucks now as well have been added to their portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I love the Mark, as you mentioned about the vehicle to grid aspect. Of course, our last podcast we brought that up about in California and vehicle to grid technology that's kind of happening there with their buses as well. But it's a multi-use, that these buses can be, utilized. And I think again that's all part of this great community that electric vehicles, we have this potential to not just be a vehicle that gets us from A to B. There's so many other aspects and use of all of this that makes so much sense. So, and I love the fact that the kids, they realize, hey, we're not hearing this diesel noise, and we're not, tasting this smelly and dirty kind of, diesel fumes and everything else. Unlike my veg van that had peanut oil, vegetable oil, that was a little bit better smell. But diesel in general, every time I'm behind anything diesel, whether it be a bus, transport truck, or just a regular truck, I notice it right away, and kind of find I'm more sensitive to it now as well. So, anyways, and for these buses, 6 to 8 hours to charge for 150 kilometers. How many of these routes are they even doing 150 kilometers? I'm betting that it's probably 100 kilometers or less for most part. So, all right. This is a subject that I love, partly because not only brings up my joy of solar panels and solar energy, but it's incorporating it with the car aspect of things. And Lightyear is a company that I have been watching probably since day one of what they're doing, and I'm really happy to see they're having some success, and they're doing stuff. Some of the research, of course, and the development of their technology is really pushing the industry into other areas that I don't think other car manufacturers have gone into quite the same way. Now, a Lightyear 2, if you want to get one of those, it's about 250 grand. It's basically, as I said here, perhaps, it's more affluent customers, but even those who can afford the $100,000, $150,000 car, that's a kind of a tough one to bite. So 250 is even that much more difficult. So that being said, there's a wait list to pre-order the Lightyear 2. I've actually put my name on it because why not? There's no deposit for it. And this is going to be interesting if they can pull this off, because the biggest thing, not only is this the 500 plus mile range really impressive. I mean, you're talking at this point, 800 kilometers? But if they can do this for even around 40, and I'm going to say between 40 and 50, maybe even $60,000, I think they got a real winner on their hands. And I think also it'll be especially a winner for those, in sun areas like California, Arizona, Texas, like that whole area across Florida. Then let's go further south into even Mexico. I know they don't bring Mexico up, but I could see other Latin American countries to getting into this. And Europe, of course, places like Spain. I think they could do really well. I think the key point to this is the price. If they can keep it around there, I think they got a winner.
Yeah, that price is definitely very attractive if they can get there. And you can see Lightyear's approach on this is, ultra efficiency. They're certainly focusing on making this vehicle as efficient as possible. And then on top of that, adding the solar panels. And the solar panels are kind of interesting because it sounds like they add roughly about 30 kilometers of range a day on a good day if they get exposed to about 8 hours of sunlight. And that's enough to cover probably most people's commutes for the day as well, too. So if you're a person who parks out in the day in the sun, that could be an interesting proposition for some people, especially if they're a person who, maybe lives in an apartment or condo and has charging limiting it at home, and they have a relatively short commute. This could be an option where they don't have to rely on public charging as often either. So it's an interesting option for some people, and I hope Lightyear does well. I mean, they've got the hard part in front of them still, but let's see where it goes. So.
Yeah, I wish Lightyear great luck with this. There's another company as well out there in Europe called Sono Motors, and they are kind of at this stage as well. They have an electric vehicle that is covered in solar panels as well and can produce that 30 to 40 kilometers of range in direct sunlight. They're at a point now where they're trying to sell the car for about 32,000 pounds, I believe, or euros, sorry. And that car, they're at basically a GoFundMe stage where they have raised money to get the design and everything up and running. And now they're asking they're asking really for the whole amount of money by the Europeans that have ordered it. They get X amount, they'll be able to start the production line. So they're at a critical stage now, and they've only got a couple weeks left in their bid to do this. And of course, that's just for Europe. No North American can even have an order on that car. But that's another critical car that's at the stage where Lightyear will be heading, is getting to the point where in order to actually get the manufacturing running, they're going to need investment from the outside, and those investors need to see a demand in order to put their money down and invest in the company. So certainly hoping Sono Motors moves forward as well as Lightyear does as well.
Yeah. So, and you know what, if I think the other, of course, big issue is the manufacturing. Getting, they could have a ton of orders. People who look at 40,000 go like, that's awesome. Here's my money. But now you got to get the manufacturing aspect of it. And I think that's probably one of the most difficult areas of automotive is, put your money, getting it manufactured and in a timely manner can be pretty difficult for a company.
Yeah, because you're burning a lot of capital to put that in place. And then on top of it, you're only churning out cars very slowly as you're learning the ropes on that new vehicle, on that new production line. And you're having to get better, quicker, faster in order to make it profitable and keep the creditors at bay.
Yeah, and a company like Lightyear has very, very not so good supplier power compared to, some of the other major manufacturers as well too. A company like Ford goes up to a supplier and says, "Hey, make this for us." They're like, "Yes, please, we will jump and do whatever you want." But a company like Lightyear goes up to a supplier and says, "Hey, can you make this for us?" They're like, "Who are you?"
Yeah. Sorry,
So.
How many thousands of parts did you want? I mean, we got millions of parts from Ford.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, but Lightyear, that being said, they've been around for a while, and there's obviously, people who are quite interested in what they're doing with their research and everything. And yeah, I, kind of crossing fingers that they're going to come out with this because, I'm looking for myself even in, hey, let's get this car down to Mexico. I probably at that point would never have to worry about plugging it in because it just charges up. So there you go. All right, moving along here. So Mercedes-Benz, they're doing an EV high power EV charging network. Great to see.
Yeah, they're partnering with a few companies, and it's interesting because they're partnering with MN8 Energy, which is going to be doing some battery grid storage, and they're also going to be partnering with ChargePoint for the units as well too. And it's an interesting concept right now. They're looking to build about 2,500 stations in North America. They're starting in North America. In fact, the first ones are supposed to go in this year. They're going to be building about 400 sites in North America, presumably about 10% of those in Canada. So roughly about 40 of them in Canada. The stations are supposed to have a minimum of 4 charging points per, and then some stations have as many as 30, which I think that's a pretty good range of sizes there as well too. And the concept is any manufacturer will be able to charge at these stations. So they're going to be open to everybody. However, Mercedes-Benz is going to be working into their cars, similar to what Tesla does. They're going to have a charge planning system and route planning. And so when the car is driving down the road and it needs to charge, a Mercedes-Benz will be able to reserve one of these stations in advance as they're driving down the road. So as they drive down the road, they can sit there and say, I need this charging station at this time. And they'll actually be able to reserve that station so that they know it'll be available once they arrive there. So that's sort of the advantage of being the Mercedes owner for this. It'll be interesting to see how that actually plays out. If you might get some EV owner that pulls up here and it comes up and says, sorry, this station is reserved. But it'll be interesting that it's supposed to be all automatically handled through the Mercedes software and Mercedes implementation. So you don't actually have to go in and manually do this. The car will automatically do this as it's driving down the road and sees it needs to charge. So that should be interesting too.
I have to say this is welcome. We need more and more charging stations as time goes along, and more intelligent charging stations is a big plus. So that ability to reserve a spot as you're on your travels is going to be interesting. It's and how it will be handled at the station with maybe a set of lights or what's on the screen, letting people know that this has been reserved for the next 5 minutes as they wait for a car to arrive. That will be kind of interesting to see. But that smart charging ability where there's not a lot of fumbling with dongles and credit cards, it can just plug into the car and intelligently know what car that is and what account to bill. And it all gets done with just a handshake of the plug is ideal.
Mm-hmm. They were saying about in Wyoming that there's just simply not enough charging stations anywhere. But look at this. They got 10,000 they're talking about by 2030. And, I think, they could partner with Wyoming Coal for their, storage of batteries. Cold storage.
I'm going to have to name this episode Wyoming, guys. It's just the way it's going to have to be, obviously.
It's just going to happen. Oh, yeah, exactly. Oh, man. How many, and this is another thing, too. Like, we over the while that we've been doing these podcasts, how many times do we keep bringing up that this amount of stations are being put in? And like Canada, was Canada last year like well over 65,000 stations put in, if I'm correct? It was some crazy amount.
I don't know the number.
And it's one of those things where, I get it. Like there's still some areas where we don't have charging stations, but for most part, it's not too difficult to get across Canada anymore. So, I'm sorry, for the state of Wyoming, how big is that? Like maybe Southern Ontario? So.
Oh, we're getting hate mail for sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Oh, man. Don't wimp out on Wyoming. All right. Okay, let's move on here. So going from Wyoming to Waterloo.
Yes. Yes, a bit of a change here. I just wanted to bring this story out because it's, of course, a local flavor. And I noticed basically on the PlugShare app, it notified me one day that a new charging station had appeared in our region, and it had 10 level 2 flow chargers installed. And I thought 10, that's a pretty incredible number. So I looked into it a little bit further, and it turned out that this charging station is privately owned. So it's not accessible to the public, but it is a new apartment high-rise that's being built on Columbia in Waterloo. And inside of their parking structure at the base, the base floor of it, they have 10 flow chargers built in with construction. So this wasn't even an afterthought. This was something that they were planning on opening with. And if you happen to go to the website, which we'll have linked in the notes, you'll notice that they even have that on their website as the amenity to that particular apartment dwelling. So this is, I just thought it was interesting to see when before Well, you would hear about people moving into high rises that no one would even consider putting in a charger, and that they had to fight tooth and nail with the apartment owner or management company in order to even consider putting in one. Now, with this particular new structure that has opened up just recently, they've actually pre-installed 10 chargers because they know the demand for EVs is starting to move. And people that are building infrastructure, whether it be apartments or strip malls or grocery stores, they know that that the number of their clients are going to be EV owners and would appreciate a place to charge, whether it's paid or included. Is something that either way works. But it's great to see that this infrastructure is starting to move in the EV way. So people are keeping that in mind as they start to build these new structures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, this is absolutely fantastic to see. I love seeing this. I'm doing some schooling in Toronto and talking to some of my colleagues there as well too. Many of them live in apartments in downtown Toronto today. Many of them are talking about, they want their next vehicle to be electric, but they're always asking questions, where do I charge it? And it's interesting, just listening to them talk, that some of the people that already live in their parking areas, so they do have a number of electric vehicles there, but they're always wondering, where do they charge them? They're reliant on the public charging network. But it's great to see, some apartment buildings now starting to build this in from the beginning and start to really prepare for this going forward. So this is really great to see, and hopefully other apartments going forward, have similar planning.
Yeah, hopefully this is a good case scenario for the other future apartments. I know that in talking to, for example, a man who runs an electrical company up in Markham and is a huge EV advocate, and he's told me that dealing with condo boards, etc., can be some of the most difficult aspects because they don't understand the whole electric vehicle charging aspect and kind of what involves, why it's a good thing. But with this, going through, it just is another case scenario that helps to bring the argument of we need, we park our cars in here, we need a place to charge. And, it's great that they're doing the level 2. That is awesome. But I wish that there was more regulatory happening where there's just even 110 volts. Because when I had a Chevy Volt, I would say for pretty much the first year to 2 years that I had it, level 1, 110 volts did more than enough for me to charge that car, to fully charge it. Now, of course, at that time, we were talking about a car that would have, anywhere from 50 to 80 kilometers of range. The Gen 2 Volt, of course, is doing 80 plus. But overnight, it was not difficult to charge that up and go, oh, well, here's my daily, I can do this no problem. So I wish they would make that, part of a mandatory aspect of things. Even if the 110, in each parking space is put in, for something as simple as somebody who wants to vacuum their car out. I don't know why we can't just make that even kind of like a mandatory. But that being said, 10 L2 chargers is awesome. And I will get to a point where suddenly, hey, there's 15 people in the building who have electric cars. And so now they got to figure out, do we shuffle our cars around to charge them, first come, first serve, or do we add more? Because now everything's going in that direction. So
and that's an excellent point, Ian. That as the number of cars increase, the management system on those chargers is going to have to be to allow the people in the apartment to know when a charger is available, when others are waiting, when cars can be shuffled. All that type of thing is going to become necessary as the number of EVs increase in this building and in the country as a whole.
Yeah, there you go. There's a new business idea for everybody here. Is we need to create a new app for people to do scheduling for charging in condos and apartment buildings. There's an idea. But to your point there, Ian, also for adding 120 volt receptacles for people as well too, just to charge. I mean, in an efficient EV like a Bolt EV or a Model 3, you can add 100 kilometers of range overnight, even at 120
Yeah,
volts. So
yeah,
I mean, for
exactly.
most people, that's plenty enough for their daily charging needs. So
Yeah.
so there, I fully agree with you, Ian, that the infrastructure is easy to put in for something like that, or easier anyway. So.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the other big thing too, because this electrician that I mentioned before, he had said, like, when you're dealing with already pre-done condos, apartment buildings, like, yeah, you're getting into some difficulties that way. But 220 is a lot different than 120, or 110, whatever you want to look at it as. It's, I think in some cases, there's actually more of an argument to make it mandatory that every parking space has 110, 120 volt outlet. Like I mentioned, maybe they want to just vacuum their car out. But the charging aspect, yeah, easily 100 kilometers overnight, no problem. Yeah. All right. We're going to finish the night off with some road trips. So before I mention about these guys, I should say that when I was in Mexico from the end of December to roughly mid-January, and our last podcast, I introduced us to a gentleman named Patrick who drove his Ioniq 5 from around Montreal, Quebec City, down to from Colorado to Utah to Arizona, and then finally Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And while I was down there, I had the pleasure of not only having dinner with Patrick and his wife and 3 children, who he had left, and they followed him. You'll understand the joke from the last time when we had our podcast, him leaving his family. But anyways, because of his post on Facebook on the Canadian Electric Vehicle Owner group, another gentleman from that area that he's in within Quebec actually just said, you know what, I'm doing this. He had thought about it for a while, and he had friends who were like, oh, I don't know if you should do electric vehicle in Mexico, etc. But you know what, he said, forget it. And because of Patrick, he drove his Model Y from that Quebec area to Laredo, Texas, crossed over there, and from Laredo, Texas, made his way to Puerto Vallarta, where if you understand the Tesla charging network in Mexico, that's like the snowboard route. And he said it was one of the best things he has ever done. He said the scenery was incredible. He loved it. And so with the 2 of them, I had dinner, and we had a great night. Patrick does this really cool, he's got this like a mega camera that does 3D video, and you put, of course, the goggles on that you can put your head around. And he was showing national parks that he'd gone to in Utah, and of course, it's not just still image; it's full on video. So you would see people walking down a trail, or a bird suddenly go flying by you, and it was incredible. It was a great night. Okay, so enough said about that. What those guys did, anywhere from 4,000 to 9,000 kilometers. Now let's go to the extreme, where we have electricamericas.org, and these guys have driven a Model 3 and a Model X from Alaska right down to Patagonia. And I've been kind of checking them out for a while, following them. Talking about a small world, where I go in Mexico is a place called La Cruz, and they have a Sunday market. And it's an amazing market. There's like so many cool crafts and artistry. The food's incredible. But there's a gentleman there, Samuel, who I've known for a while. And Samuel does amazing nature photographs of dolphins, whales, sea turtles. He'll like snorkel and get the pictures. He's got some incredible stuff. And of course, he knows I'm big into electric vehicles. We got chatting, and I mentioned about these guys. Turns out they stayed with Samuel for 3 days. And so, small world. And I got a hold of Electric Americas. I've been chatting back and forth with them. I did ask them, once they were in South America, and for that matter, like other, countries where the EV structure, network structure for charging is not really in place, what they did. And sure enough, it's very similar. If you remember, there's a gentleman named Wade Anderson. When the Model 3 first came out, he drove it to the southernmost of southern, eastern, western, and northernmost parts of North America that he could. And when he got to the northern parts, he ended up having to go to see mechanics because they have 220 with their welding, and so he was able to charge up for 220. These guys did pretty much the same thing. They would get to an area where they look and like, okay, we've not seen anything really for charging, but let's go hit up some of the mechanics in the area, and thankfully they were able to do that. They also did 110 as well. And the other aspect of this is, of course, they're documenting it, is they're showing sustainable initiatives as well as extreme sports such as kite surfing, which is so cool. So, these guys are something else, and, they're proving the point. I think they had a lot of problems charging in Wyoming, from what I understand.
It's the joke that keeps on giving.
Probably more problems in Wyoming than in Bolivia. So
yeah. I heard they had a coal generator that they attached to the back end.
So I understand this group is actually putting together a documentary of the travel. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, it's going to be a full-on documentary.
At some point, we'll be able to hopefully see it on a streaming service or something, or maybe through their website when it's available.
Yeah, I think so. I'm sure that'll be coming out. Yeah.
And I wonder, looking at the route they took and stuff like that as well too. A while back, we have the documentary "Long Way Up," where Ewan McGregor was taking the Harley Davidson live wires, electric motorcycles, and they were going all the way from South America up to California. And they had a couple of Rivian Chase vehicles, and Rivian had installed a whole bunch of level 2 chargers through parts of the route as well too. Yeah. To help out with some of the gaps as well too, even though they didn't cover all the gaps because the motorcycle didn't have quite the range that the Rivians did. But that probably helped them out quite a bit in a number of areas as well too. Because Rivian did build out quite a few level 2 charging stations through South America for some of this.
Yeah. So I mean, I love seeing this stuff. I mean, you're pushing things to the extreme. You're really proving the naysayers wrong. And hey, Eric, I heard there's problems with wintertime for electric vehicles to go from Elmira to Listwell. Is that true?
Yeah, not at all. Not at all.
Not at all. And the reason I bring that up is because of our local newspaper, who posted a letter to the editor about why he would never buy an electric vehicle because you lose half your range in wintertime, and he goes to Elmira to Listwell, and he'd be really worried about that. So just, I hope this gentleman sees this podcast and sees that, the 38 kilometers for Elmira to Listwell, how many kilometers are we talking from Alaska to Patagonia?
Yeah.
It's something else.
Only that, but if he paid attention, like I drive that route every day. And if he pays attention, just take a look at how I'm actually surprised how many EVs I now see driving Listwell to Elmira every day. I probably count at least a dozen EVs every single day, and a huge variety of them. I now see a white Ford F-150 Lightning every day on my route, going the opposite direction. So, I see Kia EV6. I see a number of Teslas, Bolts. So I see quite a wide variety of EVs coming up and down that road too now. So it's good to see.
Yeah. So, and if somebody runs out of juice, I'm sure they can get a charge up from one of the others, going by, because they only drove from Elmira to Listwell and back like 20 times when they finally ran out of juice.
Yeah.
It's about what it would take.
Man. Yeah. So there you go. So keep an eye on these guys. The website's here, electricamericas.org. And, these guys are cool to follow and see what they're doing. And, I just love seeing this type, like it's the same as Wade Anderson when the Model 3 first came out And he got the car, and he literally took 2 months off, and he just drove to the extreme points that he could. I know in Canada, he got to the Arctic Circle, and I think he couldn't go much further because basically the rocks would have just shredded his tires. There's something about that aspect of the road, but he got to the Arctic Circle, and you know, and you were talking about something. This was back in 2018, so you know, just goes to show we're now, you know, 4.5, 5 years ahead, and how much has changed with our infrastructure for charging and everything. So, hey, you know, Wyoming, somebody should call you and let you know we're in 2023 now, not in 1903.
Very good, very good. Well, we certainly would like to thank everyone for watching this evening. If you can, please give us a thumbs up on the video. That would help us. Press the subscribe button if you would like to be notified whenever a new episode goes into place. And that helps us as well. And feel free to share it with some others. And we will get together next month and see what electrifying news we could drum up and share with the Waterloo Region Electric Vehicle Association. Thanks, everyone. Have yourselves a great evening. Now, any shout-outs from you, Ian? Besides that the weather's bad here in Ontario.
Yeah, the weather's bad. It sucks. Mexico, big shout-out to you for your amazing weather. And, of course, I did get a bunch of messages from some friends who were like, "Oh, we saw the shootout with the cartel." That was about 4.5, 5 hours in Mazatlan. That's north of me. The most dangerous thing for myself was the 7 tacos I had that night, and worried about, you know. But what episode of the podcast are we on? Like, are we, because we put numbers, I think, with the podcast?
I think this is. This may be 24 or 25. Haven't looked yet.
Yeah, so you're going to put ... with apologies to Wyoming. Like, that's going to be the title now. But, and a big shout out to Wyoming and their government representatives for the great sense of humor. I've been chuckling about it all day, you know. So there you go.
Very good, very good. Eric, any shout-outs from you today?
Yes, I do have a shout-out. I'm going to give a shout-out to Candace Shen from the University of Waterloo, the Faculty of Environment there. They're doing a study at the University of Waterloo. They're looking for people that are at least 18 years old, residents of the region of Waterloo, and people who are owners or lessees or plan to purchase an EV as their next vehicle. And, you know, these surveys are always really good, and these type of research are always good because that gives people an idea of, you know, EVs do work for a lot of people today. I think they work for the majority of people today, but there's still those niche cases and there's still those pain points today and areas where we can improve and find out where the pain points are. And you know, this gets some, you know, smart people thinking about where some of these issues are and how to resolve some of these pain points. And that just makes EV adoption even better going forward in the future. So if you have the opportunity to reach out, I think on our Facebook page and in a few of our other things, her contact information there, she's been trying to gather some people. And maybe even as part of this podcast there, Mark, we can maybe even leave a note for her email address or something.
Yeah, I'll go into Facebook and grab that, and we'll add it to the notes of this video. So you'll be able to see it below. Also, if you have any comments, you can add them to the video as well in that comment section as well.
Yeah. Just quick, Candace is awesome. I really enjoyed doing that survey with her, and talk to Candace about food. She's a real foodie as well. She mentioned some great restaurants in Kitchener-Waterloo that she's tried out. So yeah, she's an amazing lady. She's quite nice. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. All right, everyone. Thanks again for watching, and we'll get together next month and see what's going on in the electrifying news for WREVA. Thanks very much. Have a great evening.
Thumbs up.